So, ladies and gentlemen, for the last time, please allow me to welcome on stage Robert, Jarno, and Roger.
So, yeah, this is supposed to be the panel where we traditionally talk about whatever you want to talk about. So does anybody have any ideas? Anybody have questions? Yes, in the back. He did have his hand up before you, Elliot. Yeah.
Are you having an active relationship with the Saxon processor?
Active relationship with Saxon?
It's complicated.
It's complicated, is Roger's answer. Questions put interestingly. Do you have any active communication with Michael K., for example?
Well, I follow him on Twitter. He writes nice blog posts about the internals of Saxon, but we don't have a communication channel that's open. Sorry. Yeah, mic drop. At some point, maybe a year ago, Mike added, or one of his colleagues added support in Saxon for kind of like a toggle to make the processing faster inside Open Toolkit. I haven't tested that because it's probably part of the Enterprise Edition. I just have access to the Home Edition, which I use at home. It would be nice to have a bit more communication with them because they are such an important part of the tool. And then actually at the same time when they were working on this optimization, I was working on my optimization to solve the exact same problem. And those were sort of mutually exclusive. Neither one is in active use. I haven't actually merged my code changes for that. But luckily, I didn't lose those when I accidentally killed my Git repo on my local machine.
Yeah, so that was presented at XML Prague this year or last year, I think. Yes.
I mean, I do communicate with Mike K when I run into XSLT, subtle XSLT issues with Saxon, which I usually do in the context of the Open Toolkit, but not exclusively. So to the degree that there's somebody representing the DITA Open Toolkit processing who talks to Mike about some of these really deep XSLT issues, I think I might be him, but I certainly can't claim any official representation.
So if there are problems, they are usually our bugs, or we wrote the bugs. So Saxon doesn't have bugs that usually are the reason for OT not working correctly. So just like with Xerxes or other libraries, those work fairly well or correctly. The bugs are our creations.
But starting Friday, I ran into a problem where Saxon 9.8 behaves in a completely different way than Saxon 9.1 in the context of code I wrote that runs in the Open Toolkit. And so, like, I reported that to Mike, and Mike's first response was, yeah. So I have to revisit that. But that's a case where the behavior of Saxon has some really serious implications for the OT code because it could potentially break any XSLT, whether it's base XSLT or contributed. So I need to get to the bottom of that.
That problem was reported also by Norm Walsh in context of xproc, of Calabash, with the base, or similar, with the base URA. Yeah.
I remember at some point I reported a problem to Michael, so the DITA-OT style sheets crashed in the Saxon engine. So it was some, actually it was not the DITA-OT style sheets, but a style sheet written by Elliot, I think. But it was nothing intentional. It was, the style sheet was valid, but Michael does a lot of optimizations, and sometimes Saxon may break some points. And Michael requested test samples, so I had maybe to zip part of the entire DITA Open Toolkit and give him some command line to test it on his side, and he managed to fix the problem, which was okay.
The thing, of course, is if I ship a DITA-OT, I always put a paid license for Saxonica in it, and that's a way to always get support.
That is a very good idea. Yes.
Before you release a new version of the DITA toolkit, are you also performing performance analysis? If it's faster or slower or?
No.
Could be still sensible. I'm not complaining, but.
So occasionally we have done that when we change Saxon versions, because that has a really large impact. But other than that, we don't really measure performance, because if it's slower, we will not release. We'll just need to fix it later on. We could have an automated system for performance testing, but we currently don't.
Yeah, and testing Saxon, I know Eero helped a lot with that some years ago when we had looked at upgrading Saxon, but that, again, that is the tool that is most likely to cause the slowdown. Like if we changed one thing, conversely, it's also most likely to increase, the processing speed. So it is something that has a major impact. And so he did a lot of really fine-grained testing. But most of the new features we ship, it'll be a new feature that, if you're using it, you're getting slightly slower processing because more stuff is going on. If you're not using it, nothing changes. Or minor changes to existing style sheets. So I think the change in Saxon version is the one, or maybe a change in Java version or something, or like the few things that are likely to have an impact on processing for documents that haven't changed. Slow nodding. Everybody's asleep because it's dark out. That's the problem with this nice view, is that we see that it's nighttime now. Do you want to mention that?
Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of sum up something that we've heard about a couple of times today, and that's this new plugin registry. And during the course of the day, we've heard from several people about the very cool things that they're doing with their plugins. So thank you, Patrick, for that. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Francois, and others. So those of you who have open source plugins, really like to encourage you to submit them. And if you are reluctant to submit them because you haven't tested them with a recent version of the toolkit and you developed them for an older version, that need not prevent you from submitting them. So the latest toolkit version might not run that plugin, but if you can clearly state which version of the toolkit you have tested your plugins with, it would still be a service to the community in terms of discoverability, because on this site people will be able to search and find out what plugins exist. And if they see that your plugin supports 2.5.4 and they're running 2.4, they can install it. So that should work. And I understand that there are people in the room whose livelihood depends on the commercial plugins that they sell for a large fee, and that's okay, and we don't want to stop people from doing that. But for those of you who already have open source plugins and they're out there somewhere and no one knows about them, please submit them to the registry so that people find out about them, because we discover every year that people are doing actually very cool things, and a lot of people just don't know about it. So, with the limited resources that we have, one of the things that we don't do very well is marketing, and we don't toot our own horn very much. So I think that those of you that are out there that have built things that help the toolkit do things that it doesn't out of the box, let's share those with the community, because I think there's a lot of really useful things out there, and I'd like more people to know about them.
And I think a lot of the people who develop these plugins, maybe some of those who were presenting, are like myself and like Jarno, who will have fun developing something and then throw it up there and then move on to the next thing. And yeah, we're not really into the PR side of things. So this is a way to get it out there and let people know about it. And it's an easy way to get it out there, and you don't have to go to conferences or tweet about it or any of these things.
The way that the plugin registry is right now, as Jarno talked about it this morning, is just sort of a baseline implementation. We have other ideas about how to make that better and more useful. And, one of the things that we've talked about doing at some point is making it a little bit clearer, maybe, which ones have been used more often or which ones are popular or, whatever. So at some point, we're hoping that as a certain critical mass appears there, it becomes apparent, which ones do you want, and which ones might be really, really helpful. And if you submit an older version of a plugin, then perhaps at some point, if a lot of people take it, they might give you the feedback and say, I really love this thing, but is there any chance you could make it work on 3.2 or something?
Or even better, they'll say, I think you just need to change this one thing, and then it'll work on 3.2.
One question, is there a plan to just include the open source packages on plugins, or is there a list of available commercial plugins, because that also could add to the knowledge where to find solutions for problems I have?
I think right now it's set up as something that will automatically install, which clearly can't be done with the commercial ones you have to pay for, unless, I guess, they work it somehow where you add a license later. But it is not something that has been considered.
But what if you have your own repository? That's another question, right?
Oh, yeah. So for myself, I have a lot of plugins. I haven't done this yet, but I could easily set up a registry within the IBM firewall, and somebody can easily install directly from there. So yes, I could do that. But that doesn't address, like, if Oxygen, say, were selling all of their plugins for all of a sudden, I don't know how those would go into a registry that lets everybody find them. I don't know. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that. I'm definitely not encouraging you to do that.
Well, of course, I realize we're having an open source community system, but could it be possible that the DITA-OT Toolkit implements some licensing system to accommodate licensed plugins?
In some cases, you don't need special support in Open Toolkit for that. You just stick your license file into the class path, which in the Open Toolkit's case is more or less the config directory in the latest versions, or few latest versions, and then a plugin can read it from the class path and then sort of validate that, yes, this is something that works, and then add that magic ingredient into your processing chain.
Okay, so I will pick randomly someone from the room, and they should.
No, we have a topic.
We have a topic.
Roger has a topic.
Oh, okay. So another thing that we've been discussing recently with regard to new releases that we'd like to just sort of float to you as the user base is how do we decide what to work on, and how do we decide what goes into a new release? And there have been different factors that have influenced that in the past. Some of them we're proud of, some of them we're not. But since we do have, as we just discussed, a large range of things to choose from when deciding what to fix or add, we've been discussing whether it would make sense to define, let's say, something like a theme for a new release or something, or focus area or something like that, and saying, during this next release cycle, we will focus on something. And we're still thinking a little bit about that, whether that would make sense as a sort of more coherent message saying, we are going to focus on this one thing in the next release, and if you care about that one thing, then make sure you install this new version because you're going to love it. That could be a motivating factor. It could also be a demotivating factor if we choose to focus on something that you don't care about. And then we end up building it, and people say, yeah, but I don't care about that version because all they fixed was X, they said. And
every single T-Rock bug.
Right. So that could be a sort of two-way street. We're not sure whether that would really make things a lot better or not, but it's one idea that we've had about, what could we improve or change about the development process. So that was just something we wanted to mention.
The problem with theming a release is that we have very limited funding for the project, and we have very few people working on the project. So if we decide to pick a theme, it might not be driven by the needs of the users, unfortunately so, but rather by what we're interested in doing or working on. So it's problematic to pick a topic or feature set to work on. We were talking about this, was it yesterday, that one possible theme would be DITA 1.3 feature complete. So we fix all the remaining things that haven't been implemented for DITA 1.3 and maybe fix the biggest issues that are in 1.3 features. That's a good theme for a release. What were the other ones?
The project.
The concept of a project configuration file where you'd be able to define input files, profiling files, meaning the data val files, different argument sets for given transformation type, and in a way have a file that defines your deliverables, and you'd be able to keep those there instead of just creating batch files or property files to create a combination that will generate your deliverable or product. That would be interesting, but we haven't picked the theme for the next release.
Actually, we've seen that idea also in one of the last Lightning talks. It will help also the cross-deliverable linking, probably, knowing all that information at once. Yeah, so...
Does the silence mean they like that idea or they don't want a theme?
No, I like that. I like that.
Elliot likes the idea, but we don't usually like Elliot's input.
As long as the theme is cross-deliverable.
Yeah.
Okay,
I like to pick...
Elliot's idea, I like the idea.
Okay.
We implemented something like that in our CCMS too. We implemented something like that, maybe not as sophisticated, to overcome the fact that there's no such thing as projects. And I would like to think our customers like it. Pushing that into the open toolkit seems like the right thing to do.
In a way, that would be not equivalent to, but starting the project by authoring the release notes and listing the highlights of the release, and then you start to just fill in the implementations for that. It would make someone's life a lot easier, so they wouldn't have to go through all the issues and try and sort of clarify the picture of what are the release highlights.
I suspect that much of our audience works in documentation and would sort of like to flip the usual model of do a lot of features and then scramble to write the docs. You get to write the docs up front and then we scramble to do the features. So, interesting change.
Like the test-driven development,
Yep.
right? So
It's
you write the test and
doc-driven
then
development,
the
yes.
implementation.
Oh no, they wrote up a new feature, now we have to do it. Any other questions?
Yes.
Talked about bugs before. How much of your time is spent on fixing this backlog and on new features?
Too much.
I mean, the comparison.
It varies between us. We both, Jarno certainly focuses more on features and I focus more on the maintenance, but that might be largely a part of, based on the role we play in the project, where Jarno's doing this for fun as a hobby project, and I have a large customer base to support, and they get very upset when things are broken.
Maybe that's a good mix.
It's certainly good that we have both perspectives on the team. It's probably not good that we have one person with each perspective on the team.
Yes, it's somewhat difficult to be motivated to fix bugs if you're doing it as a sort of a pastime hobby, because usually bug fixing is something that you should be paid to do. So it's a lot more interesting to work on newish things, and I have to sort of not implement everything I want, because there might not be a use case for things that I might find interesting to implement. But it's really unfortunate that Robert spends all his time fixing the bugs, because that's not sort of fun. And I get to do all the cool things, like just decide, yeah, this is what I want to work on. It's as if I were my own boss.
I am not my own boss. But yeah, I do think that reducing the size of the tracker will help with that quite a lot, because even just going through the bug tracker to work on bugs, just finding the right one to work on takes so much longer than it should. And I spent a lot of time going through old ones to try to figure out if they're still relevant. And again, I am kicking myself a bit now for some of that work, but yeah. Anything else, or do we end with me kicking myself? We shouldn't do that, no.
Okay, so I was writing down a list of things I might be interested in working on for the future releases. The list is on my laptop, and laptop's at the back of the room, so I'm not going to go back there. But one of the things I added or somewhat enabled in pre-process 2 was the use of non-retrievable resources, or not directly retrievable resources as the input set. Meaning you could have a URI as the, for example, for the start map or the start file. And it doesn't have to be a local file. It could be something on a network drive or a website that just serves data for you. Or it doesn't even have to be a URI that's retrievable. It could be a URN, and then you use some magic service to resolve that URN into something that can be retrieved. Normal DITA users will not need this feature, but people who embed Open Toolkit into CMSs might feel that it's a useful feature. And then I don't remember the rest of the list. What do you guys want to work on?
I don't know. So we have one vote for that.
One thing that I've wanted to work on for a while now on the docs is a little bit more testing and that sort of thing. And some of the stuff that Stefan presented and that Jason presented today have inspired me a little bit to see if we can maybe apply some of that to the docs project. So thank you both for those suggestions, and we'll see what we can do with that. If any of you out there are passionate about these sorts of things and enjoy, testing and testing docs, this docs as code approach is something that's very, very dear to my heart, and it's what we try to practice here with the project. So if you'd like, if you're not allowed to do stuff like that at work because you have to, edit binary FrameMaker files or something like that, but would like to do something like that, we need help. So, that's one thing I'd be interested in doing. This is not a promise. I do not know what the next year of my life will look like, but that's one thing I could imagine placing a bit of focus on.
And if you're old enough that you have children who are sort of maybe over 15, you could introduce them to a new hobby.
Do you have like a list of features? I mean, do you have at the top of your head a list of feature requests or top feature requests that have come in, or it's...
Yeah, in the issue tracker. One of the things that we have in there for tags is a priority tag. Until last week, it was P1, P2, and P3, which probably didn't mean much to many of you. The tags are now named priority high, priority medium, priority low. And that is sort of covering both priority and severity. You know, if it's a bug that has priority high, it's probably a severe bug. But, you know, you can also have a feature request that's high priority. Really, by default, if somebody doesn't give any indication of how urgent something is, it's opened as priority medium. I don't think much is marked as priority low unless it's something that I opened and I knew was low when I opened it. But a few things are marked as high, either by request or because Radu came in after the fact and said, this is hitting a lot of our customers. We've got a few of those. But, yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you worked on something and it's sort of like not finished? You have the skeleton of the thing, and then you show it to the customer or your boss, and then they panic because they think that's the final product. So sometimes I have ideas for features that I don't put into the issue tracker because then my customers, meaning you, might panic because it's a bad idea, or then you might actually get excited that this is a thing now, when I just had the idea that maybe this is a good idea. So I should actually probably use the issue tracker for ideas, but then because the issue tracker is so full of things, I don't want to put anything more there because I'll end up going through those pages, and like 15 pages of GitHub issues is difficult to navigate.
Can you convince them to ask anything else?
No. Yes, we have.
Oh, yeah, go.
So maybe now that there are no more pressing issues here in the forum, I'd like to take the opportunity and thank you for... I'm sorry, just as a participant, you can do so from your perspective as an organizer.
Give him the hat.
No, because the theme that came through, being centering around plugins, is something that I probably think is very well received by everyone in varying degrees of complexity and usefulness, and so I would like to thank you very much, all of you who are contributing to this kind of development.
One thing I just realized is that maybe it shows the age of Open Toolkit that we spend more and more time around the code, meaning around things like testing or plugin registries and so forth, not on the code. Not to say that the code is ready, because it definitely is not. But we're spending more and more time around the actual tool, and maybe that just shows the age, because we don't need to spend all of our time just working on the code. Or
let's call it maturity.
Maturity, okay, not age. It's a mature product. So are we going to Amsterdam for the after party?
Yeah, there's a band that has a concert in Amsterdam. Do we have people interested to go there?
Robert wants to go to a concert in Amsterdam.
I mean, who wouldn't? No, yeah, there's a band that I like from the UK that started their world tour, and they're not coming anywhere near my hometown, Austin. But of course, they're Oh, we're out of batteries. We're done. Yes, the band is playing in Amsterdam, but I don't even know if there are tickets left, much less traveling up. The band is called the Idols, punk band from the UK. I expect everyone here listens to them, no? They're playing tonight in Amsterdam. I don't know where in Amsterdam. So they've been teasing me about this for a while.
Well, another thing that I want to tell you is that on the event page, the link to the DITA-OT Slack channel is an invitation to join the channel. So if you follow that link, you'll be able to send feedback to the DITA-OT and be able to join the DITA-OT channel, right?
So we used to just communicate over Skype, like years back, just Robert and I. And then Slack came along, and that has improved our communication a bit, so it's a bit more open. We should be communicating more over at GitHub's issues for increased visibility and also, in a way, maintaining the information, because we just have the free tier to Slack and it throws away everything that's older than the index of 10,000, something like that. So if you want to follow the project at all, please join our Slack channel community, whatever it's called.
And there you find, exactly. And there you find also the feedback form. So you can, that's very valuable to us. And we share that also with Jarno, with Robert, with Roger. So it's quite useful to help us improve this event. So I would also like to thank the developers of the DITA Open Toolkit, because without them we will not have this event. It will not make sense to host an event without them. Also to our sponsors. So along with our company Oxygen Synchrosoft, so the Oxygen XML editor, we have XSLT, and Caroline is here now. So someone from Xia is here. She was able to arrive now. But if you stay over for the DITA Europe conference, you can find them also in the exhibition area and chat with them. Orbis Technologies, as I said, they are R Suite. The R Suite CMS is now this company, Orbis Technology. And Comtech, and Daxon, yes. And Comtech are the organizers of the main DITA events, DITA Europe and DITA North America, among other DITA-related conferences. I would like also to say thank you to Radu. He managed from our side most of the logistics and to my colleagues from Synchrosoft who help us being able to have this event, and also to all of you being here on a Sunday, right, until close to 6 p.m. So thank you very much, because without you, we'll also not be able to have this event, right? So you can just have a meeting in a coffee or coffee shop or something. Yeah. So although sometimes it doesn't seem that a lot of things are going on, but step by step, I think we are improving and we are sharing a lot of ideas. And because we didn't broadcast live, this year and last year, I was able to follow actually the conference, and I really enjoyed all the sessions, and I learned a lot of things. So I'm really happy with with everything. Hope we'll be able to have the next event next year, so to reach the 6th edition. So hopefully, yes.
So I don't know about these guys, but I'll be at the DITA Europe conference. So if you feel like asking me about something, please come and ask me about something.
Particularly Aikido.
Yeah, because when I was standing there, I just came up with an exercise, a warm-up exercise. I thought I'd be dying to test it out with few of you, but we can't because it would look silly. But like an AMA, Ask Me Anything. Not necessarily that, but related to Open Toolkit. I don't really have any opinions on DITA itself.
Obviously, I don't either. And also, we need to thank George.
Oh, yeah.
I think our goal here is to keep George happy, so we seem to have done that. So I think from that perspective, it was a success. So thank you.
There's some bad news for you.
Uh-oh.
The concert is sold out.
Good news, because it means that those of us that don't go to the concert can drink beer with Robert.
Yes, it means I don't have to make the choice. So yes, I'm actually not surprised. I knew most of their shows were selling out. So yes, but thanks for checking.
So thank you all, and that DITA-OT day ends here. So have a nice evening.